and gentlemen, thank you for participating in today's webinar. My name is Rowan Petts. I'm the Executive Director of the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Korea. For those who do not know, AustCham Korea is a non-profit organisation. We represent around 110 companies or 260 members in the Australia-Korea business community. The Chamber's mission is about fostering a vibrant Australia-Korea business community through networking, information sharing, advocacy, and representation. Today's webinar will provide an update on the Korean market with insights on the government response, economic stimulus, and future outlook. The webinar will start with Rodney Commerford, who is the Senior Trade Commissioner of Korea and Mongolia. And the later part of the webinar will feature Dr. Yooni Kim, COO of Novotech, and Ms. Kang, Director of Nielsen Korea.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, hi Rowan, thank you so much. And firstly, thanks to yourself and AustCham for hosting the webinar today. And secondly, thank you for the large number of people who've taken time out of their day to join. I know there's a huge influx of webinars around the world at the moment, but hopefully we can share some insights as to what's happening in Korea. So as Rowan mentioned, I'm Austrade Senior Trade Investment Commissioner based in Seoul. This is my fourth year here in Korea. So during this time, or when I first arrived, there were protests on the streets to impeach the president. We've had very high tensions with North Korea, and now we're into probably the world's worst pandemic in 100 years. So yeah, very interesting time during my period in Seoul. I guess just to kick off, as many would know, South Korea is Australia's fourth largest bilateral trading partner. It's the 12th largest economy in the world and is also the world's 5th largest exporter. Thus, not only is Korea's success in managing COVID-19 important to understand, it's of even greater importance to Australia as one of our top trading partners. I guess our relationship will become more critical as both of our two countries, hopefully, look to be successfully managing the pandemic, whilst many other countries are still crippled by COVID-19. This afternoon, I'll briefly touch on 3 areas. The first of which is Korea's COVID-19 response. The second is the Korean economy and Korean government stimulus. And the third is some select sectoral updates. So firstly, with regards to Korea's response, I guess second to China, Korea continues to lead the fight and successfully flattening the curve and managing, I guess, the continued spread of COVID-19. To date, Korea has only 242 deaths against 10,728 infections, which is about a mortality rate of 2.2%. The peak of the crisis, or in terms of daily cases, was 909, and that was on the 10th of March. But now we're over the past week and into this week, we're looking at new cases of 10 or less. It's also interesting to note that more than 50% of cases can be attributed to a church, the Shincheonji Church, which is located in Daegu, about 3 hours out of Seoul. Now, probably the first thing to note in terms of Korea's response to COVID-19 were the lessons it learned from the MERS outbreak in 2015. Korea had the highest infection rate of MERS outside the Middle East. The response of the Korean government at the time lacked transparency, and information was not shared in a timely manner or in a wide manner. And in the aftermath, the government was widely criticised for its handling of MERS. That said, though, they took the lessons from that outbreak and developed a system to rapidly expand testing capabilities during future disease outbreaks or pandemics. And this is one of the reasons Korea's widespread testing and effective response to COVID-19, including adequate health infrastructure that can respond during the pandemic, including rapid distribution of locally manufactured test kits. It's worth noting testing and treatment has been kept separate from hospitals, or there have been dedicated treatment hospitals developed thus reducing the risk of cross-infection or contamination amongst other patients or the general public who are trying to go about seeking regular treatment of health issues. And I guess it's also worth noting for these reasons, and I guess the confidence in managing the crisis, but then also the sensitivity of closing their borders, that Korea, they did not close their borders, and they also did not force its citizens into a lockdown. So it's roughly, this is about week 10 of the Korean government's social distancing campaign. However, these are guidelines and they're not mandatory rules that force citizens to stay indoors, as we've seen in other parts of Europe and other parts of the world. What they have suggested and what they do strongly recommend is citizens avoid public gatherings, practice good hygiene, and wear a mask. And I guess, which is another factor, Koreans were already accustomed to wearing masks. So when the outbreak first occurred, or when it started to look quite serious, I'd say that nearly 99% of the population were already wearing masks. Masks are widely available in Korea, and the location of outlets or stockists show up on the local map applications that you may have, or most Koreans have on their smartphones. I guess one of the other factors is the high penetration of or the very high quality of ICT infrastructure in this country. So Korea was the first country in the world last year to launch 5G. It has some of the world's highest internet speeds and probably one of the highest levels of smartphone ownership. So Koreans are already very tech savvy, so the use of technology to monitor and send alerts was easily adopted. The warnings that are sent out, based upon where you are, you'll receive warnings of new cases in your region or neighbourhood, and they provide, I guess, quite startling details of that individual. It'll include everything for the past 48 hours on their movements, for example, from their apartment to the convenience stores they visited, to they may have visited a dentist, to the dumpling shop. So then they used a combination of mobile phone records and also credit card records to trace people's whereabouts, and thus, I guess, alert people that they may have had contact with a COVID-19 carrier. But thankfully now I guess as cases continue to fall, the Korean government looks to be reducing the intensity of its social distancing to what they're calling a new everyday life quarantine campaign that will require low intensity distancing while I guess further relaxing engagement in social and economic activities. And this will come into force on the 6th of May. I guess the biggest risk Korea now faces is from overseas arrivals, and the majority of whom are Korean nationals returning home. However, I guess to put it in context, Korea's main airport, Incheon, normally receives around, say, in January, February, 3 million arrivals per month, where in April, this figure looks to be less than 140,000. Now, I'll just briefly talk about the economy, and I guess what the impact of COVID-19 and what the upside and downsides are. So originally this year, the IMF had forecast 2.2% growth for Korea in 2020, but that's now been revised to negative 1.2%. But it is worth noting that is a far smaller reduction than many other countries, including that of Australia. In 2021, the IMF have forecast a growth of 3.4%. So I guess the immediate prospects this year are constrained by the impact of COVID-19 on its other partners. I guess what is worth noting is that Korea is one of the few, if not only, advanced economy in the world where more than 50% of their GDP is derived from exports. So this means that their key trading partners and investment partners in the US and Europe, who are still, I guess, heavily weighed down by the COVID-19 crisis, will severely impact Korea's trade. I guess to give you an insight, the Korean Customs Service data for April show a 27% reduction in exports in the first 20 days of April. And this has hit semiconductors, which are down by 15%, the automotive sector nearly 13%, and petroleum by about 54%. However, it's in Q2 when I guess the real reality will start to be exposed, where we will only know then to the true extent in Europe and the US and how quickly those economies will rebound. I guess from a domestic perspective, things are set to improve in Korea as the impact and the effect of the government stimulus measures will start to play out and be reflected in consumer behaviour and spending. In terms of the Korean government stimulus, the government were very quick to react with their first stimulus package announced on the 18th of March, and the 5th was announced last week. In total, the Korean government has committed more than Australian $300 billion in economic relief. And the stimulus is broad ranging and encompasses everything from household level incentives to stimulate local retail spending, through to trade finance, support for startups, and stimulus aimed to stabilise the financial markets. On the 6th of April, Moody's reconfirmed South Korea's sovereign credit rating as AA, stating that the COVID-19 impact for the country will be limited, with the industry expected to regain its growth momentum midterm in 2020. The latest stimulus was announced last week and is focused on support to Korea's key industries and to prevent mass unemployment. Specifically, these are aviation, shipping, shipbuilding, automobiles, machinery, power generation, and telecommunications. Now, I'm just going to briefly go through a number of sectoral updates. The first of which is food and agriculture, which obviously is a key sector for Australian exporters. What we have witnessed, certainly during the height of the infection in Korea, is a significant decline in the food service sector, as far fewer people were dining out, eating at restaurants. 5-star hotels are seeing occupancy rates of 3% or less, and with all major conferences and events cancelled or postponed. What is positive is that in April, with both the warmer weather and the reducing infection rates, it seems that there's some normality returning and people are starting to dine out again. And it's also worth noting that whilst there was a decrease in the food service sector, retail sales had increased in many areas, and this includes sales of Australian beef, which were up by 10%. We've also seen demand for fresh fruit and produce also remain strong as consumers look to boost their immunity by eating healthy. And just as one example, the Australian table grapes are currently on track for their best sales to date. In one case, a TV home shopping network sold 10 tonnes of product within 30 minutes. That said, we've also seen an impact upon reduced flights and availability of air freight of a key concern. And so just on this point, I'd encourage exporters to make submissions to the Australian government's International Freight Assistance Mechanism. And basically the greater number of submissions that we receive for Korea, the greater the likelihood that we'd be successful in securing flights. The second sector I want to touch on is resources and energy. Obviously coal and iron ore, two of our biggest exports to Korea. These will be impacted by, I guess, the downturn in the demand for steel. Both Hyundai Motors and Kia have experienced significant decreases in export volumes and have resorted to temporary closure of their production plants. This fall in automotive demand and production may impact Australian exports of both iron ore and coking coal as the demand for steel decreases. And once again, its anticipated impact in the second quarter will be more drastic than Q1 and give a much clearer impact as to how, or picture of how deep the impact will run. In the context of critical minerals or rare earths, whilst Australia was still considered a high-cost destination in terms of processing and supply in comparison to Africa and China, once again, the pandemic strengthens the need for greater diversity in supply. Korea's over-reliance on a single market were most recently exposed midway through 2019, when Japan imposed export restrictions on imports for semiconductors. Korea was also reminded of the reliance of one market for supply during the THAAD, or the missile defense system dispute between the US, Korea and China, and I guess the impact that can have on trade and investment. It's too early to tell whether the COVID-19 pandemic will be the trigger that does shift investors and battery manufacturers and suppliers strategies to diversify. However, it's the most compelling reason yet. And finally, in terms of resources and energy, hydrogen, or I guess in particular, Australia is a possible supplier of clean hydrogen to Korea. I guess what instills confidence in us is that the recent convincing victory of President Moon's Democratic Party is a positive win for the renewable energy sector. It has been suggested the Democratic Party will now push for a carbon neutral economy by 2050. Korea's hydrogen ambitions have not been impacted by the pandemic and remain focused on improving both domestic and international supply of hydrogen in line with their original targets laid out in the 2019 hydrogen roadmap. Korea is looking to identify large-scale hydrogen production bases in Australia, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and a number of other markets to realise their hydrogen economy by sourcing the lowest cost hydrogen and further developing their hydrogen industry ecosystem that encompasses hydrogen production to storage, transportation, and utilisation. Whilst hydrogen fueled passenger vehicles are the low-hanging fruit, the more significant applications will be the use of fuel cells for power generation to substitute fossil fuel-based power sources. Now, finally, I'm just going to touch on research and development, and I think this is quite a compelling story and one which will set Korea apart from many other countries in the world in the post-COVID-19 recovery. I guess it's important to understand as many of Korea's traditional sectors have been under threat or faced new challenges from other competitors around the world, and whether or not the COVID-19 pandemic will see I guess a faster move on the emergence of some of these industries. So put it in context, Korea's investment in terms of GDP spending is the highest in the world, and although Korean corporates' profits decreased by 4% in 2019, R&D spending continued to increase. In terms of ratio, Celltrion, one of Korea's larger health and biotech companies, was ranked first, but by amount, Samsung was number one. By industry, the health or pharmaceutical sector were way out in front, both with a 2-digit ratio, and was followed by IT services and the automotive sector. It's worth noting I guess President Moon is, I guess, a big believer in the role that technology will play in Korea's future. One of his, I guess, his pet projects is around artificial intelligence. He's launched a national strategy for AI. He's also now initiated a system semiconductor strategy. And we're also already seeing a drive by Korean semiconductor manufacturers to diversify their business, and Korean firms such as SK are leading the way with the development of AI semiconductors, or semiconductors that imitate the human neural network. We've also seen since the COVID-19 crisis that SK Hynix has reinvested in a foundry division that it had in the past spun off, while Samsung Electronics is planning to bolster its investment with the goal of becoming the #1 firm, not only in semiconductor memory, but also the non-memory sector. That concludes my presentation, but before I hand back to Rowan, I just briefly want to mention the 3 areas of of Australian government support available to exporters. The first of which I mentioned, the International Freight Assistance Mechanism. The second is through export credit through Export Finance Australia. And the third is our long-standing Export Market Development Grant Program. And I'll be sure to share those links with AustCham, and they can be circulated to all attendees. Thanks, Rowan.
Lauren, I would like to share some presentation slide. Okay, thank you so much for giving me the chance to present the biotech and healthcare update for South Korea and the COVID-19. Before starting my presentation, I want to provide updates of the company of Novotech, and very briefly. And Novotech is a full service CRO. Our headquarters is located in Sydney, Australia, and we have a subsidiary office in most of Asian countries, including South Korea. And we are able to provide the service from drug development consulting to end of the clinical development stage, including all aspects of the clinical service for human clinical trial. We focused on the supporting small and medium biotech companies, and we have experience of the more than 1,000 pivotal studies for drug approval from US FDA or EMA in Europe. And we obtained the Best Asia Pacific Biotech CRO Award for the last 4 consecutive years. Specifically in South Korea, we opened our business in 2007, and we have 13 years experience here. And we currently have about 70 staff in Seoul office, including project manager and the laboratory specialist group and clinical research professionals. And Novotech South Korea made a partnership agreement with the key hospitals in South Korea, like Seoul National University Hospital, Yonsei Severance Hospital, or the AustCham Medical Center, and so on. Based on the local experience in South Korea as Australia headquartered CRO company, today I will give you a biotech and healthcare area South Korea updates under the COVID-19. Next. Okay. So, and these 2 graphs shows the COVID-19 outbreak condition, both of the South Korea and Australia. In South Korea, the outbreak started early February and peaked with more than 900 cases on 19th of February. In the late February, South Korea was the country with the highest number of the new cases out of mainland China. This country managed this outbreak relatively well, as the previous mentioned, and it's decreased gradually in March, and about 10 new cases per day for the last 10 days from now. And Novotech monitored the Korean hospital condition very diligently for clinical trial operation from time to time. In February to mid-March, most of the Korean clinical sites prohibited external visitors access, including CRO, CRA's monitoring activities. And the hospital wanted to concentrate on their efforts on the patient care and tried to avoid any kinds of unnecessary risk of the hospital-based infection. However, even in the period, most of the Korean hospital had never been stopped patient access, as well as ethics committee review for new clinical trial protocol. Principal investigators and study coordinators, and who are the two main roles in clinical trial, are working as normal at the sites. This kind of arrangement was helpful when they resumed the clinical trial work after the peak time of the outbreak. That's why the less impact on clinical trial operation from COVID-19 situation in South Korea compared to the other countries. And South Korea is being recognized by global biotech as the best country to operate their global clinical trial at this moment. In this month of April, most of the clinical trial hospitals in South Korea reopened all their facilities for clinical trial. They allowed the CRA's on-site monitoring visits. I'm able to say the Korean clinical trial sites are returned back to the almost normal condition before COVID-19. Biotech is now the changing direction to Asia from US and Europe. and increasing Asia portion in their global clinical development program. According to global data research, and the number of the trials initiated by Asia Pac, the region from the beginning of the March is about 10% higher than in the States, while the number of the early phase 1 trial in Asia Pac in the period is double higher in South Korea than the North America. It shows a very clear willingness by biotech company to find alternative location for clinical trial during the America's slowdown from COVID-19. In Australia, outbreak trend was amongst the delayed shape of South Korea, and with the peak in the late March, and now the sharply decreasing and very stable. And still the majority of the Australian clinical trial sites are not allowed the CRA's on-site monitoring. However, they are open for the subject recruitment ethics committee review. And Australia PI and the study coordinators are also cooperate to change from on-site monitoring work to remote manner. And the remote change is very important in the everywhere under COVID-19, including this biotech and healthcare sector. And the Novotech has a platform to support the remote monitoring. We have a system and process for remote monitoring. This is well equipped under high demands of the remote monitoring from COVID-19, one of the important factors in clinical trial. I think in both countries, investigators are showing their continuous interest to participate in new clinical trial. I think those two countries are the most advanced country in Asia Pac for clinical trial. It's expected more global biotech companies are looking forward to getting solutions from their drug development from Asia Pac location, dominantly South Korea and Australia. Those two countries will be the more important in the global biotech development area. And I received some questions about what is the main region. South Korea managed COVID-19 quite well, and how that impact on clinical trial performance in South Korea. I thought that there are 4 main regions, and the first one is the country's medical infrastructure, and the second one is the country COVID-19 test capability, and the third one is a country framework of the medical cost and the nationwide reimbursement coverage for all Korean nationality population. And the last one is a COVID designated hospital. And I'll explain one by one briefly. And the first country is medical infrastructure. And we have to think about the mortality of the COVID-19. It's very different between countries, and from 1% like Australia, 2.2% in South Korea, but the highest the mortality rate is almost the 7%, even over in some countries. One of the indicators to show the country's medical infrastructure is hospital bed per 10,000 people defined by WHO. And South Korea's hospital bed per 10,000 people is 115. That was here is 4 times higher than United States. And that means there are enough number of the facilities to treat and control COVID-19 patients in South Korea. And the COVID-19 patient can be treated in well-equipped hospital setting, and the rare things are happening outside of hospital setting. And second one is the country COVID-19 test capability. I think that is a relatively well-known factor globally. Based on the bad experience from MERS outbreak in 2015, Korea-based medical device companies developed the test toolkits for COVID-19 very rapidly and distributed this one nationwide quickly. And I think the drive-through test technique was one of the most creative idea and a very efficient manner to complete more tests with a lower risk of the medical steps viral exposure. In fact, there is a rare case of the medical steps COVID-19 infection in South Korea. And I think Korea is #1 country in terms of the test capability. On average, 10,000 tests per day have been done. And the Korea test kit companies are now exporting their test kit to the United States and many countries in Europe. And third is the country time frame of the health reimbursement system. And eventually that is associated with the COVID-19 test cost. And 100 Korean population, Korean people are under the National Health Reimbursement Program as a part of the social insurance program. And Korean people do not spend huge money from out of their own pocket for medical treatments. That is a bit different from the countries where private insurance program is dominant. And from the same principle, in COVID-19 test fee can be reimbursed, and the people need to pay for about 113 US dollar at the maximum cost. Even Korean government made a quick decision, and COVID-19, the tests were free of charge in case of showing COVID-19 relevant symptom as screening. People could take the test with less cash burden. And I think this made more people inclusive in COVID-19 screening and eventually good outcome to manage COVID-19 outbreak in South Korea. And the last one is public hospitals, and served more as designated place for treating COVID-19 patients than these kinds of the big hospitals in the Seoul National University or AustCham Medical Center, Samsung Medical Center, and Yonsei Severance Hospital. These kind of big clinical trial sites can continue clinical trial activities with less impact from COVID-19, which is, I think, a very smart arrangement. And this slide shows some biotech's activities to develop their drug of the COVID-19 treatment and vaccine. And the COVID-19 clinical trial are under the key agenda by governments. This is quite unique opportunities for biotech companies, and we are able to conduct a clinical trial under the more support from the government for the developing the drug and vaccine under COVID-19. So far, the Novotech are managing 4 COVID-19 studies in South Korea and Australia, and the more studies are underwaiting at the feasibility stage. And I'm more pleased to share the good news. A COVID-19 phase 2 study has been approved by MFDS last week, and we obtained this approval in 9 working days from submission. Even in MFDS first review opinion is given a week. I think that this is a fast track approval based on strong communication between Novotech regulatory specialist group and the MFDS, the Korean regulatory body. In February, the MFDS officially announced the COVID-19 clinical trial was their top priority. In March, they released a new regulation or guidance for industry regarding clinical trial management under COVID-19. That included remote ICF collection, and remote IP consultation by doctor for clinical research. For your easier awareness, remote medical consultation by doctor are very limited and not allowed in clinical trial setting as normal. However, MFDS flexibly announced the exemption under COVID-19 because in the clinical trial patients are unable to visit sites or unable to see their doctor. And MFDS also released the DTP guidance. That means IP supply direct to the patient home under COVID-19. The last but least update by MFDS was their regulatory review timeframe, which is fast track, and we call that is for expedited program. MFDS will review COVID-19 clinical trial protocol within 7 days for repurposed drug and change the indication, and 15 days for the novel new drug. For your information, non-COVID-19 protocol is reviewed normally in the 30 days by MFDS. That is the 2 to 4 times faster than ordinary case. More importantly, I wanted to say these kinds of fast track approval is possible without any impact of the non-COVID clinical trial review. And South Korea is one of the key countries for COVID-19 study. Also, that this country can be recognized in more attractive location for non-COVID, the ordinary clinical trial as well. And I think the South in the Australia is now going to the quite similar the approach. And the HREC showed expedited review for the COVID-19 trial, and the COVID-19 protocol can be reviewed out of the normal HREC meeting in Australia. They mentioned 2 weeks review timeline. That was a part of the fast track. As you may know, the under CTN concept for the most of clinical trial in Australia, TGA approval is under the notification, not approval. So this 2 weeks final approval timeline in Australia is very attractive for biotech companies who want to develop their drug for COVID-19 treatment. And the biotech companies who are working with Novotech are very happy with this kind of the fast track approach from South Korea and Australia. And our team's professional approach is leading them to move to the right track under somehow uncertain condition of COVID-19. Though more Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, India, Philippines are following fast track regulatory timeframe change. And I think that is obvious that South Korea is leading edge in the area in Asia region, in addition to the well-known Australia's fast track. Okay, under the uncertainty of the COVID-19, and again, the transparency is the most important factor everywhere. And we know the CRO, the transparency is also very important for biotech sponsor, and especially who don't have a local presence in this region of Asia. We tried to capture the clinical trial site status from our local team and develop the COVID-19 country bulletin report like this slide. And this report includes each country's COVID-19 snapshot in the top of the reports and the clinical trial site status. And from the clinical trial perspective, we searched any impact in each step of clinical trial activity at site, from feasibility and the ethics and the regulatory approval and the subject recruitment and the patient visit to sites and on-site monitoring. And the last one is IP supply and delivery. We made the report including top 10 sites in all Asia, Novotech, the country location. Simply here, the green means and the process available with no or the less impact from COVID-19. And the yellow means the specific process on hold in this specific site. And you can see the South Korea report here, and this one is Australia, and this one is South Korea. And you are able to see the most of items are colored in green. That means in the South Korean top 10 site, it will come back to normal condition. And one more update in the Ulsan University Hospital here also, the now changing to green from yellow this week. So that graph is very helpful for our biotech clients to understand our situation. And this kind of transparency is making our biotech company trust the regional CRO. And also we obtained good feedback from biotech companies. This is very helpful message for them to set or change the direction for their clinical trial. We will open this report to public via our website, and you are able to make a download of this report as well. Here I just show the 2 country reports, but the more countries report is available from our website. In summary of my presentation, and South Korea was good enough to manage these kinds of unexpected challenges. And the regulatory MFTS was taking key role to make the South Korea environment more reasonable with fast track approval, as well as timely release of exemption regulation. From biotech's perspective, CRO partners' local expertise and the regulatory communication skill and manpower and site networking in the country is making them more quickly and appropriately available to up-to-date information. As a regional leader of clinical trial, and the Novotech is feeling responsibility to share right information with the global biotech companies. And we believe this effort can make a biotech company a bit more certain during the times of the real uncertainty. And COVID-19 was very challenging for everyone in the world, including biotech and CRO. However, I thought equally this is making the new opportunity, especially in biotech healthcare sector in Asia Pac, and more attention was given to the biotech and healthcare development area now. And given updated till now, the South Korea shall be taking more important role. And the Novotech group are very happy to ready to support the clinical trial activities under COVID-19. That is not only from the business point of view, but also from the human life-saving point of view. And here is the last of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. This is a great honor to present what we learned during the Corona-19 periods here in Korea. As introduced, my name is Lan. I'm a market analyst, especially for FMCG trends and retail in Korea. I'm closely working with Korean clients as a client business partner. Ever since we had a very first confirmed case back in 20th of January, early this year, we have been taking roller coaster for 3 months for now. In given this precious time that, let me share that what really happened in the FMCG category and also in retail industry from consumer perspective. As COVID-19 sweeps the world as well as Korea, consumers are being forced to dramatically change their purchase behavior. Nielsen is tracking these changes and based upon shoppers and consumers' purchasing pattern, then we are trying to provide the navigation beacons for retailers and manufacturers, trying to understand the changes and plan for what comes next. So if you look at these slides, Nielsen has identified 6 key consumer behavior thresholds that tie directly to concern around the COVID-19 outbreak. If you look at threshold, stage 3, it's more like a pantry preparations. In this stage, government implements localized quarantines, town, community, schools, we are banned to go out. And in this period, panic shopping pattern has been noticed across the different market. When it comes to Korea, we think, we are still in the threshold stage 5, but we are about to move into the stage threshold 6, which is living new normals. So in the living a new normal stage, we expect that, we are about to move on to the new normal lifestyle, return to the normal, but with high cautions. So for today, I'm gonna mostly talk about what really happened in the specific category from personal care, cosmetic, food, and the working from home environments, looking at the Nielsen sales data in the before and after COVID-19 outbreak, what really has been changed in terms of consumer purchasing behavior and lifestyle, and how this change linked into the channel shift from offline to online. And looking at the consumer behaviors, maybe we can quickly talk about what's coming next in Korea in the post-COVID-19. For today, not surprising that well known that hand sanitizer and mask sales are in high demand, not only in Korea, in all the market. We had a lot of news about mask shortage in the beginning of outbreak. Needs for hygiene product and protection product was essential for the initial stage as a reactive response. But what we found interesting is that we saw the rise of mouthwash sales as well on top of immediate sanitizer and mask. Korean consumers try to manage bad breath caused by wearing the mask for all day long. Easy and simple bad breath management items in mouthwash category sales has been growing compared to last year in the same period or even before and after COVID-19 outbreak. As well as we noticed the mint candy category sales lift. This buying behavior indicate that initially the consumers in Korea react immediately, but after some time they kind of try to manage their daily life with a more active reactions. We see up and down in the cosmetic categories. As you can imagine, you stay home, not going out, then no need to put on makeup that much. And then anyway, even though you go out, you are wearing the mask, so no point of having the makeup at all. Even though the Korean women are highly interested in the taking care of their skins and everything, but we see the clear up in the skincare category, However, we see the downwards trends in the makeup category. So if you see in the left side, all the skincare item, toner, essence, facial mask, sales went up, while the mask clean makeup category is downwards. But what we found also interesting is that, you know, there is a segment that no residue makeup on mask. Actually, it's very small segment, but the sales has been growing a bit in this time of periods. So we saw the interesting trends in personal care and makeup category. Major change and the trend has been happening in the food category. HMR, we call it home meal replacements. Market growth is not a new trend in Korea. HMR has been growing in the past couple of years already, mainly due to the increase of small household size. We have more than 30% of household is one single members or one or two. And the trends of purchasing convenience are pursuing the convenience in daily life. It was a main driver. But with COVID-19 is accelerating the trends of HMR sales, as well as stocking food items and fresh food items are all grown. If you look at all the sales trends after COVID-19, with the limitation of out-of-home food consumption, home cook, home dining went up during these periods. Either they cook themselves, but not just a simple cook, because they have to figure out 3 meals a day with all family. So they are more into the taking care of better home cooking in this period of time. You know, and at the same time that, you know, highly reliant on the delivered food, Korea has a quite strong convenient way of ordering the food. Either they cook themselves at home or highly reliant on the delivery food. Food delivery systems also contribute at these trends as well. What really changed actually the shape is the working from home. Actually, working from home is not really common way of working in Korea. We are kind of, you know, used to working at the office or specific area, not working from home. But working from home related office supply sales went up, not surprisingly. So if you look at the right side, bed tray, laptop stands, or the cameras, office supply item sales went up. At the same time with online schooling, that every kids need to have laptop to follow the curriculums of online school. So that's the actually create the new market demands with working from home, working from studying the environment. If you look at the right size, not only office supply, home cafe, better coffee, culture emerge as a new trends. Again, out of home food and drink consumptions are very limited. Coffee after meal is the common practice for working people. It doesn't go away even if, you know, you are working from home. So after home meal, we need a coffee, but it has to be very good coffee. So capsule, home cafe related devices and item sales saw the fast growth trends during COVID-19 periods. Everybody is suffering from Corona blue, then there are like a multiple way that how Korean people try to overcome the Corona blue by consuming specific food or items and some other activities. It is a quick snapshot that, you know, to release the stress, cigarette, alcohol consumption in every household went up. At the same time that as they're staying the long time at home, that they are looking for something sweet. So bread, biscuit, snacks, all the sweet related category sales has been grown up. We haven't included in this chart, but we also noticed that meditation app, home training related service all went up to release the Corona blue stress in the periods of Corona-19 pandemic situation. So for now, you know, what really affected in terms of retail changes, definitely, as you can imagine, online and neighborhood retailers are winner. The people are not going out for the big shopping. They either order through online, and when they have immediate needs, they just visit nearby neighborhood stores. That concludes that online and neighborhood channel has been growing up. On the contrary, the hypermarket lost their shoppers. So we look at our panel data, 32% of hypermarket shopper moving in from the hypermarket offline into online stores. When it comes to online, we clearly see every actually online retailer sales has went up, especially Coupang, SSG.com. They carry all the grocery and non-grocery item. These two players are winner in this period of time, gaining share from especially for hypermarket shoppers. Then what comes next? I don't think we have a clear answer for now, but let's try to find a clue that what consumers say about after COVID. Nielsen conducted a global new normal survey across the market, including Korea. 1 out of 2 consumers say that they will trade up their choices after COVID-19 because previously the value for money type of purchase was a strong trend, but after going through the difficulties that they want to ensure the quality versus price. So we are expecting that more high premium, mass premium category will gain more share before compared to previous years for sure. So as an evidence that we quickly check the concentration of sales of top brands across the FMCG category, the leading brands actually tend to have more share than follower brands in the COVID-19 periods of time. All these consumer trends shaped in this period, it will go stronger and more. So expansion of home economy like home cooking, home training, home beauty, we believe that this type of lifestyle will be reinforced even after COVID-19. Then acceleration of on-contact interaction platform will also will be increasing in Korea market. We can't have like a face-to-face in-person interaction. Instead, we believe that a lot of activity will moving on to the on-contact platform afterwards. Learning from the past, back in 2015, we had a MERS outbreak. At that time, luckily, we had like a V pattern. We were able to recover quickly after after MERS. Well, here we are hoping that also we can shape the V pattern after post COVID-19, but we have to see what's coming. Learning from the past again that we had on top of MERS that financially we always compare what really happened in the 1997 and 2008 financial crisis. Every company, every manufacturer, every retailer faced the challenges in this unexpected outbreak time. But there are innovative players that they try to tackle with the challenges, and they come up with new services and new innovation to try to overcome the situation. So Nielsen is as a market insight provider trying to help with the client for navigating consumers' attitudes and behaviors in the long run. Okay, this is end of my presentations.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kang, for your insights to the F&B sector. I guess now that we've got a few minutes left, and we might extend the session just for a few more, because I see that we have plenty of questions from those attending, and thanks for everyone for putting your questions in. We might just start with a question for Yooni Kim. We have a question based on KFDA, and the question is, most Asian countries accept KFDA as medical sales certification. will there be an opportunity for the TGA to accept KFDA certification?
Thank you so much for the question. Even though the Asian countries accept MFDS medical sales certificates, and the country has their own process of the approval, and drug approval, product approval from the one country can be recognized by the other country as a reference. For the Australia, and therapeutic goods must be entered in Australia register of therapeutic goods, and before that the law is applied in Australia. And in Australia, the comparable overseas regulator is US FDA, EMA, UK, and Japan, Health Canada, Singapore, and Switzerland, as far as I know, and updated by my regulatory team. And the TGA expedited review with the reduced approval can be expected if the drug is approved in those locations. And actually, currently, MFDS is not on the list of TGA comparable overseas regulator. However, based on our experience, the TGA and may use international assessment to reduce duplication of any effort to prepare in the regulatory approval in Australia. So the Korean data can be used to reduce the time, but that is not the same condition of the in Southeast Asian countries.
Thanks for that, Yooni. I think we'll got a question here for Rodney. This one's from Darren. South Korea is well known for its development of autonomous systems. Is there an appetite for investment in Australia company engaged in developing robotics or autonomous systems?
Yeah, thanks, Rowan, and thanks for the question, Darren. Yes, I think there is appetite, and we've seen interest from some of the big the chaebols, such as SK and Samsung. However, the biggest challenge that we face is that Australian either research or capability in robotics and automation is not widely known, and that's something that we are constantly trying to change. But it is an iterative process. So particularly, Darren, I welcome if your firm or company has particular interest or capability in that space, yeah, I'd be happy to chat further.
Thanks for that, Rod. And back to a question for Yooni Kim. We have a question here. What is in the relief measures are in place for foreign-owned SME businesses, and how are telehealth and teletrials being adopted in Korea?
It's very innovative question, I think. And as I already explained in my presentation, and the remote consultation by doctor is not well distributed in South Korea, and somehow that is under the strict regulation in South Korea. However, even today, I read the newspaper, and President Moon and the Korean government is now taking a drive to expand more the remote way of business. And I think the telecommunication, teletrial will be a part of that. But that is not effective at this moment. And remote consultation by doctor is now the very limited approval by MFDS under COVID-19, just the COVID-19, but the post-COVID-19 period. And I think that there will be an agenda by the Korean government as boosting the economy from the telecommunication or the remote way of everything. So, and that there will be a part of that, I expect.